There's always been kind of a debate between which dividend-paying ETFs are the best ones to own that will not only help add value to your portfolio, but eventually get you to that early retirement. And there's a handful of these ETFs that you could potentially buy and receive those quarterly or monthly dividend payments, but having to manage too many stocks and ETFs in your portfolio can get a little messy. So if you could just narrow it down to one ETF that not only pays a decent dividend, but consistently adds value year over year, it would have to be SCHD or the Charles Schwab US Dividend ETF. And this is one of those ETFs that you could potentially buy and hold forever. And as long as you're adding shares every single year, you could eventually get to that early retirement. And like I said before, there's a lot of similar ETFs like VYM or JEPI or SPHD. But today I wanted to go over why I think SCHD is frankly the best of them all, and really the only one you need to retire off of. And for those of you who don't know, SCHD is an ETF that tracks the highest and most consistent paying dividend stocks in the Dow Jones US Dividend 100 Index. Now, I don't want to get too much into that because it can get kind of boring, but basically what that means is when you're investing into this fund, you're buying into companies that pay dividends regularly every single year. One of the more important things about SCHD is its super low expense ratio. So it's currently at 0.06%, which means that when you invest $10,000 into this fund, you're only being charged $6 per year just simply as a fee to own this fund. And compared to other ETFs, that expense ratio is pretty low, and it's one of the many factors that make this ETF attractive to more passive investors. Another reason why is its performance. So SCHD has returned about 13.5% year over year for the past decade, and that's not including its dividend payout every year. So with the dividend being at 3.3%, your average yearly return is going to be anywhere from 16 to 17%. But this year, because of the market that we're in, it hasn't performed as well as it normally does, but it's only down about 1.5% year to date, which compared to other stocks and ETFs in the market, that's actually pretty good for this year. So now let's talk about SPHD, which is very similar to SCHD, not to mention they sound the exact same, so you might want to listen carefully as I talk about these two, and I'll try not to mix them up either. With that being said, let's compare the two. So I've owned SPHD for a little over a year now, and something that I really like about it is the fact that it pays out its dividends every single month rather than every quarter. And it's really nice getting paid just a little bit more often. And on top of that, its dividend payouts are a little bit higher. It's currently paying about 4.5% every year. But with SPHD paying out a little bit higher in dividends, its growth is a little bit more flat. So it's currently returning about 6% per year, and including the dividend, it's about 10% per year. So kind of comparing the two, SPHD does pay out a little bit higher and more frequent dividend, but it doesn't grow near as much as SCHD does, which is why I think SCHD is a little bit better for long-term growth. And this is why I think SCHD is really the only ETF you need to retire, because when you do eventually get to that retirement number, whatever that number is, and let's say it's all in SCHD, you'll be making that 16 or 17% on average every year, with a portion of that being paid out in dividends. So for example, if I consistently bought SCHD every single year, and I eventually got to my retirement number of, let's say, $1.5 million, I'd be making, with that 16 or 17% return every year, I'd be making about $250,000 in gains, with about 50K of that being paid out in dividends. So if you wanted to keep it really simple, that's a strategy that you could potentially use to retire. And with this specific ETF, it's not really something you can retire off of within 2 to 3 years, but it's definitely a long-term buy and hold while reinvesting the dividends every single year until you reach that retirement number. And it's never too late to start. I just recently added shares of SCHD into my portfolio, and I plan on buying into this ETF going forward, and I'm excited to see the results along the way. Another thing I really like about dividend-paying ETFs is you don't really have to worry about them too much. Like, you don't need to worry about them crashing 20% in one day like you see with some stocks. Even with some of the dividend stocks that I own, I'm down 40 or 50% this year. But with the dividend ETFs that I own, I'm only down just a few percentage points this year. When you buy shares of an ETF, it not only adds instant diversification to your portfolio, but it also adds some safety as well. It lowers both the risk and the volatility. I've always been a fan of ETFs for that reason, and the best part about dividend ETFs is no matter what happens in my portfolio as I'm buying and selling and holding stocks, I'm still receiving that cash from dividends as passive income. And this is why I think SCHD is one of the best dividend ETFs on the market and could potentially get you to that early retirement depending on how much you're buying into every year. But let me know in the comments below what you guys think of SCHD, and I would love to have a discussion there. And I will catch you later. See ya.